Right, time now for today's Focus Report. US leader Donald Trump has made the fight against illegal immigration a pillar of his presidency, with mass deportations and promises to build a wall between the states and Mexico. But migrants entering the US are more often than not from small Central American countries, not from Mexico. Plus, Mexican authorities have become American allies in trying to push back would-be immigrants. The Southern Border Plan, a strategy implemented by the Mexican government, aims to block tens of thousands of Central American migrants, as our correspondents report.
Every morning on the river Suchiate brings with it this peculiar ritual. Thousands of people cross back and forth along the river dividing Mexico and Guatemala, all within sight of the official border entry point. That's customs right behind you, right?
Yes.
And they don't do anything when you cross like this?
No, we have our visas to cross legally, but it's more practical for me to go this way, closer to my job.
Most of these people live nearby. Some are shopkeepers buying supplies without paying import duties. But in the middle of the river, 3 flags tell another story: Guatemala, Mexico, and the United States. For many, this stretch of river is just the start of a dangerous and unpredictable journey north. It's a trip that Neri gave up on. The young Honduran tried to reach the United States 4 times, but was caught and deported every time by Mexican immigration officials.
Over there by the river on the Mexican side, things are fine. But trouble starts once you try and board the train. That's when you're putting your life on the line. Anything can happen.
Migrants have been heading north on top of these freight trains since the 90s. 8 months ago, on his last attempt to make the journey, Neri fell when he tried to jump on a moving train and lost both his legs.
It felt like an adrenaline drop. I felt dizzy and lost hold of the ladder. At first I didn't see my legs, I didn't feel anything. Nowadays it's become harder because immigration officials are all over us. Before they didn't do anything along the train tracks, but now they chase people and sometimes beat them up and leave them in the middle of nowhere.
Since the Southern Border Plan was launched in 2014, Mexico's been deporting more migrants than the US, around 150,000 every year. There's a beefed-up military presence in the south of the country, checkpoints and expedited deportations. The policy was developed with the US to help lighten their workload, according to Salva La Cruz, who works with an NGO defending migrants.
In this region, you often see American immigration officials who are here to provide training and support to their Mexican counterparts. They've obviously given them lots of technological equipment, infrared surveillance, biometrics. By doing this, the United States are turning this border into their own border. It's a process called externalization of the border.
Migrants trying to dodge deportation face tough odds.
Last year, they detained 188,000 illegal migrants, but granted political asylum to only 2,800.
The Mexican government's kept very quiet about the Southern Border Plan. They turned down our many interview requests. But the strategy's effects are visible in places like this migrant shelter near the Guatemalan border. Elvin and Argentina met en route. He's from Honduras, she's from El Salvador.
I no longer want to go to the US. I would like to stay in Mexico. Life isn't so bad here. So why persist in going up north? Mexico is a good country.
After finding out how dangerous the journey would be, they've given up their dream of reaching the US. They're feeling a bit better about trying to get asylum here, however slim their chances are.
They might deport me, but I want to keep pushing until they give me my refugee status. I prefer to try and do that again and again rather than pushing forward with this journey and risking my life.
Her husband and son were murdered in front of her a few months ago. Since then, she's been on the run from killers who keep threatening her. So, does the Southern Border Plan really deter migrants as desperate as Argentina? We went beyond the security clampdown area up to Mexico City. Horacio Robles is a priest and director of a migrant shelter. It's empty, right?
Yes, it really is. Perhaps they've found an alternative route to head up north, a way to better avoid the authorities.
At this time of year, the shelter would normally be bustling with migrants. But today there's only 6 people staying here, including Edilberto, who's deciding whether to keep going.
I'm a bit scared. That's why I've lost my nerve. Now we're thinking of asking the Mexican government for asylum. With Donald Trump as president, I think the US is a mess right now.
But Horacio is sure that it would take more than the current policy to stop tens of thousands of Central Americans from trying.
The other day in the communal room, I was chatting with migrants about the US president, and they were all saying the same thing. Trump's wall, it won't stop us. We'll dig under it, we'll climb over it, but we'll get through.
Both Mexico and the United States are working hard to repel Central American migrants. But for those fleeing desperate situations, the Southern Border Plan is just one more thing to deal with, and it won't stop them trying to reach a better life.
Well, for more on this story, I'm joined now by James Cohen, professor at the New Sorbonne University here in Paris and a specialist in Latin American immigration policies in the US. Professor, thanks very much for joining us here today, France 24. What more can you tell us about the Southern Border Plan and how important is Mexico's cooperation in the US fight against illegal immigration?
Yes, well, from the US point of view, it's become quite strategic because under Obama already, and I'm sure that this will be reinforced under Trump, the idea is to externalize the border, as the man was saying in the report, just as the European Union tries to do in certain North African countries and elsewhere. In other words, they're relying very heavily on Mexico to push back Central American migrants who are usually in desperate social situations. They are, for all practical purposes, in reality, they are refugees, even though they're usually not recognized as such. And they're fleeing situations of endemic violence in Central America. Sometimes it gets worse as they try to cross through Mexico.
Now, that report claims that the Mexican government has been very quiet about the Southern Border Plan. Why would that be?
Because I think that first of all, the Mexican efforts to put these policies into place have been rather chaotic and haphazard, from what I read. And the other thing is that I would not be surprised to learn that some of the endemic violence that the migrants undergo in the course of their crossing Mexico is sort of overlooked by the Mexican authorities, and sometimes the Mexican authorities might even be associated with certain forms of extra-legal violence. So I think that the less they have to say about the matter publicly, the better for them. Under Peña Nieto, nothing has really been done to curb the violence.
Now, you spoke briefly earlier about the violence that these migrants face. Where are most of these migrants from, and could you speak to us more about the situation that they're facing in their home countries?
Sure. Well, essentially, we're talking about people who come from 3 countries. The 3 countries known as collectively as the Northern Triangle of Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And in all 3 of these countries, there are levels of violence that have never been seen before. This is not just leftover violence from the years of the Civil War. This is endemic violence that has to do with the very tissue of social life, a certain form of transnational capitalism which has been imposed on these countries. And it also has to do with the fact that gang violence has been transplanted into these countries via Los Angeles, where many migrants took part in gangs and then were deported back to their home countries where they had practically never lived before. So the gang is a mode of survival, and it also creates living hell for people in the neighborhoods where these gangs operate.
Okay, well, the Southern Border Plan, we know, was launched in 2014 when President Obama was still in power. How has the plan, or perhaps the implementation of the plan, changed under the new president, under Donald Trump?
It's a little bit too early to tell, but certainly the Southern Border Plan is operating because we've now reached a point where, as of 2015 already, I believe, more than half of the Central Americans sent back to their home countries were deported not from the U.S. but from Mexico. So So to a certain extent, this plan is working. What I think is not working is any serious efforts to address the real roots of this violence and social inequality in the home countries. And I would say that if the situation in those countries degenerated so much under Clinton, 2 Bushes, and Obama, it won't get any better under Trump, because certainly their efforts to address the underlying social problems will be absent. They really address this as a security issue exclusively.
We've seen the first 100 days of the Trump administration just go by. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, of a crackdown on illegal immigration. But have we seen any real action from the new U.S. leader, or is it just
I think that the
too
usual levels, which were already quite high under Obama, of deportation have continued. And what we're starting to see also is a few cases which are exceptional for the moment, but people who are supposed to have benefited, who did benefit under Obama from temporary protection, youth between the ages of 15 and 31 who had been granted protection under the DACA program. A few DACA youth have been deported in ways which were not supposed to happen even under Trump, but it's happening. And in communities where lots of migrants live throughout the southwest of the United States and elsewhere, people are nervous.
Okay. Well, Professor, thank you very much once again for your time today. That was Professor James Cohen from the New Sorbonne University here in Paris.